Okay, so Go Math, Unit 9. You're already Unit 9, Lesson 1. And today we're talking about dependent and independent variables. So there are two things that we need to really work with today. So up until this point, we've had expressions and we've had equations. So we know that expression is just a representation of some number to be named later, combined with usually a constant of some kind. So like Mr. W buys $5 worth of chocolate and a bunch of apples. Well, we don't know how many apples he buys, so the apples could be n for number of apples. So we'd have $5 plus n, right? So that's an expression. And then it could equal something, which would help me solve that expression later on down the road. But what I would have at this point is independent and dependent. All right, so we have independent and dependent. Well, here's something to think about. If you are independent, you're not connected to anything. You're not tied down. You don't rely on anything. You're just independent by yourself. By yourself as you wish. Now, but over here, you're dependent. That means that you rely on something. Now, right now, it's coming into tax season, and we know that you are dependent of your parents. So your parents get to claim you as a dependent because you depend on them for food or for shelter or for anything like that. So if I had an expression, $2 per apple. We'll go back to my apple expression. $2 per apple, and Mr. W is going to buy n apples, and that's going to be the total cost, right? So I ask myself, all right, I have two variables. One of them is the independent variable, and one of them is the dependent variable. So I have $2 times n equals c. So $2 times some number of apples equals c. So Mr. W goes there. Now he has to make a decision. Am I going to throw down $12, and it's predetermined the cost I'm going to make, and then I just take whatever apples that I want, right? Or do I choose how many apples I want, and then I pay for that amount there? So the amount I pay depends on how many apples that I buy. And in this case, when you see the word total, as in total cost, that typically means dependent. And you could think of this like the total amount of money I have in my pocket depends on the choices I made that day. Did I buy 6 cheeseburgers? Did I not buy anything? Did I give $10 to my friend? Like that depends. The total will depend on everything that happens over here. Okay? So I have 2 times n equals c, so this would be my independent variable, because aside from Mrs. W, that kind of looks like a D there. I don't want to confuse that with my writing. Aside from Mrs. W, I am an independent man who can decide how many apples he wants to buy. So if I show up and I say, I want 18 apples, I want 7 apples, I want 29 apples, I can decide that. Depends, then how much? If I buy 18 apples, that determines how much I spend. So how much I spend depends on how many apples I buy. That's the dependent variable, all right? So let's see what this looks like in your book. First, Jen burns 5.8 calories for every minute she jogs. Identify the independent and dependent variables in this situation. Then write an equation to represent the relationship between the number of minutes Jerry jogs and the number of minutes, or the number of calories she burns. Sorry. Now, I can clean this up a little bit. Now, I know that I'm going to have independent and dependent variables, and I know that I'm going to write an equation to express the relationship there. So, I look at Jerry burning 5.8 calories for every minute she jogs. That's very important because now it gives me a standard. That's a constant thing. That 5.8 minutes, that's not going to change. 5.8 minutes constantly. Now, I know that I need to identify the independent and dependent variables in this situation, and I know I need to write an equation to represent. Now, Jerry burns 5.8 calories every minute she jogs. So there's jogging, there's minutes, and there's calorie burning. I need to know the number of minutes she jogs and the total number of calories she burns. So, write my equation or my expression. What I end up with here is that Jerry burns 5.8 calories, and there's a number of minutes that she jogs, and that's going to determine the total number of calories that she burns, all right? So we have our total number of calories, the overall thing that it has, depends on how long she works out. And that kind of makes sense to us, right? So if I have my total calories that I'm going to burn up, If I work out for 2 hours, I'm going to burn up more calories than if I work out for 1 hour, right? So I'm looking here, and I know that this then is my independent, and I have a total, which is my dependent variables, all right? What I'm looking at here is I have 5.8 calories for every minute. I multiply the number of minutes times 5.8 calories, and then I get the total that I'm going to burn. All right, so now I understand that my independent and dependent variables. Let's look at just one more here. There we go. Write the equation. C equals 325G plus 250. And what we have here is it is $3.25 to play a game per game of bowling. And then I have $2.50 shoe rental. And that's what it's going to cost to rent shoes. And that's a one-time fee. So it doesn't matter if I have one game that I'm going to play, I spend $2.50, or 5 games. It's going to have a $2.50 rental fee. So my total cost equals my $3.25 times the number of games that I play plus $2.50. So my total cost for the evening is going to depend on how many games of bowling I participate in. All right? So C equals 325G. The total cost, and again, look for that word total, is my dependent, and G is the number of games. So I can decide if I want to play 5 games or if I want to play 1 game. I can decide if I want to show up and just sit out a game. It doesn't matter. That's an independent choice. And then, of course, one more thing to realize here. My 250 doesn't change anything. It doesn't go anywhere. So we do refer to this as constant because it's not changing. Like if your siblings are constantly bothering you, they're pestering you, they're poking you, they're constantly doing it, it doesn't change. Nothing about that changes, so it's constant. All right, so the thing to remember, I have an independent variable and I have a dependent variable. And what's important is the relationship between them. So an independent variable is just the decision that I can make. The dependent variable it depends on what I do. So if I have a box that shows up in my house and I say, how many items are in that box? Well, that depends on how many items my wife bought, right? You could also look at this as a cause and effect. So independent would be the cause and dependent would be the effect. Whatever one did, the other then changes because of. All right, so independent and dependent, make sure that you're looking for the relationships between those two variables.